Hi everyone and welcome to today's user group session. I'm Ronelle from TotalCAD Solutions Center and I'll be the host and moderator for today's session. Without any further ado, let me present Francois Swanepoel, founder and director of Fusion BIM, who will be taking us through cost estimation in Archicad. Over to you, Francois.
Thank you everyone for joining. And as we said before, Ronelle said before in the introduction, I'll be talking about getting quantity takeoff costing from Archicad models. In this exercise and demo today, I'll be using the open template that Andre Steinberg presented with last month's webinar, and just expanding on the functionality within this lean, slim template that he made available. So in today's session, we're going to go through these few things. Understanding quantities from your Archicad built-in tools, where those quantities are coming from, natively in your model. Using classifications to organize the model elements. And then using element parameters and properties to drive quantities. Building your properties and expressions to collect and format the values, and then using your Archicad schedules to report those various takeoff and calculated cost values. Sounds very simple. It actually is once you get going, and this tool, this template will then help you to do that. The main ingredients that we need to do this is obviously this template from Andre Steinberg, and then the ASAQS elemental classes. So that's from the Association of Quantity Surveyors of South Africa, which have built a classification system that aligns with their elemental bill. An elemental bill is mainly used in conceptual design and feasibility costing. So that's what we're going to do today. So those that attended last month's webinar will recognize this little model. And this is the little model that we'll be costing out today in this session. Okay. So here we see the plan, and you can see it's populated with lighting, furniture, and the structural elements of the building. So let's first look at where the quantities are coming from in the model. So we just take this model here, and at this stage, I haven't installed any of the components needed for this takeoff. We'll be doing it live in the session, and you can follow along and afterwards download this file set for you to try out. So we select any element in Archicad. We bring up the element information palette. So this under window palettes and element information. Mine is automatically docked here in this little corner where I usually use it from. And this is then the information palette of that selected element. And it's reporting various information. So if I switch these little switches off, you'll see that we get basic information telling us what the classification is. So that's your Archicad standard classification. It's classified as a solid wall. There's your ID and your unique ID, the layer, all sorts of things about this wall that is selected. There's your properties that's already in this element. And then these are your finishes. So we switch that off, then go to the next one. Here you get distance values, length values, height values. So that's mainly your length on all the different sides of the wall, the thickness of the wall. So these are linear, information about length. Switch on the next one, you get your area, and that's your clear intersection on plan. When you switch off the next one, you'll get your height values and your different skin heights on the inside and the outside of the wall. And it carries on to the areas, different areas with doors and windows cropped, without doors and windows cropped, and you can see the difference. Because of this large sliding door, you can see a significant difference there. So you can page through all of this information, and if you switch everything on, obviously you can just scroll through it like that. And if you select more elements, let's just go to like this collection here, you'll see that it gives you organized the details of one wall and then the similar information from another wall separately, nicely grouped. So these are the quantities and values, parameter values that we can take and use in quantity takeoff and calculations in the schedules. I'm just going to park this there. And now you know the basics of where these quantities are coming from. It's already in there. Okay. So the next thing is then talking about the classifications. If we go to our classification manager, under options, classification manager, you'll see that we have the standard Archicad classification system in here, and most of us are already used to using this, but we need the ASAQS classification. So all you need to do after downloading the ASAQS classification system, that information will give all that download information towards the end. So you'll go and use the import on your classification manager, and then we'll go and fetch the classification system. And I'm going to just simply import the standard classification system. The one file has just the clean classification system, and the other already has the built-in properties and expressions for the project. Okay, so we'll bring that in. It's asking you to whether you want to merge or replace. And in this case, you want to say merge, and over here is just in the project, and say replace. And then you'll see the second classification system brought into the file. Okay. And by means of classifications, these classifications must be linked and assigned to properties, or the properties linked vice versa to the classifications. We'll do that as a next step, because you can go straight to the properties from your classification manager at the bottom. And just looking at the properties as they are, these are the built-in properties from Andre's template. And you can see it's all about specifications, sanctuary, lighting, and doors and windows. Okay. Now, I'm just going to be back one step. And I'm going to bring in that second classification, which has the properties built in. And you'll see the difference when I do that. So I'll bring that in there. This will all be in the download. And you're asking Archicad to include the properties from the file. Yes, we want. And all from the file. That's correct. And it's going to ask us to, in this case, we don't want to merge. Then we'll get duplicates. we want to replace. It's the same classification system, just with more information. So it's safe to replace them and replace. And you'll see there's no change here to the classification system itself. But on the right-hand side, available properties is now something happened. Okay. Let's first see what changed in the properties themselves. And you see those are the ones we were looking at up until the specifications. And here we have properties brought in for quantity and cost. And we'll be going through these properties themselves. There's some magic here with clever expressions, and you'll see it's surprisingly powerful just with these few properties. So that's the one part of the setup that you'll do when you receive this download file set. And in order to link these properties, you need to designate the classification or the particular classification component or group that you want to link it to, but we're going to link this all these particular properties to everything inside the ACAQS set. And you just click edit, and here you can see the source properties, and by assigning the tick boxes you can then link these properties to the ACAQS classification. Okay, so that sets up our classification so that we can start organizing our model. And we've looked at what properties have been brought in, and now we'll start utilizing them. So for that purpose, I'm going to go to the next file as I've set it up for this process. And we are now at the same place as that other file. You see it's the exact same model. One thing that I did here is just create a layer combination to hide certain elements that we'll not be working with. For example, the mesh of the side. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is then also bring in schedules. So there's different schedules, differences between these schedules. Your element schedules work with a complete element. For example, a composite wall is made up of different skins, as we know, and of building materials that has surfaces assigned to them. But the element schedule will work with a complete wall, and then you can extract information about its composition. The component schedules is the schedule with which you can use to drill down into those components. So whether it is a composite or a profile that has different skins for the element, you'll be able to work with those parameters of those different skins separately from the complete wall. And then your surface schedules, they are obviously just designated for working with your surfaces. And it works then with all the visible faces of all the components, even then the composite separate skins. Okay, so these three element schedules is part of the setup. Then there's one component schedule and then one surface schedule that we'll be going through. So just to go back to that one file, in order to then add your schedules, you can just go to your project map, right click on any of these schedules and open the scheme settings. And as you can see, these are all just standard built into this particular template. And we use the import button at the bottom. And we can bring in all these schedules at the same time. This is part of the file set. And you'll see these schedules being brought in. We click OK. They're populated. And you can then start interacting with these schedules. Okay. So in this file, next file, I've set these up in sequence so that we can then start looking at them. Looking at the first schedule, this is then just an all element schedule. At the top right, we look at this criteria, and it's simply calling for all element types. So everything about this project, about this model, will be brought into the schedule. And then in adding our parameter fields, we'll use the parameter fields to bring in those parameters. And what we're calling up is the element type, the ID, the ASAQS classification that's assigned to that element, whether it's a wall or a door, the quantity, length, and area and surface area, and the net volume. And we simply do that by just clicking on the add, and we can then fetch various parameters of this element from the list. Okay, so that's what's in here. And looking at what is in the schedule, what's reported to us, you'll see that we have columns and we have column segments. Just to highlight that difference there, if we look at this column here, just isolate this column, and you can see how cleverly Andre had set up this column. It's one column, but it has the footing, the footplate, and the steel column all in one. And if you look at the setup of this column, the column itself, column as a whole, you can assign classification to that, and you need to. We'll go through that next. But the segments themselves is built up with its different settings, the sizes, the materials. And important to note here, in particular with these segment columns, each of these segments can be assigned a classification, which is maybe different or more specific than the complete assembly. So I just wanted to highlight that. Each of these segments, as they are set up, has their separate classifications, if that is what you need to pull into your schedule for costing. Otherwise, you just give a lump sum assignment by means of the classification and the values in the parameters for the costing. Okay, so let's slide. Bring the model back. So back to the schedule. This file has already been pre-set up with some of these classifications being done to save time for the webinar, and I left a bulk of them undefined for this classification so that we can do this in process. Okay, so it's calling up, there you can see the walls and the slabs, windows and the zones. And the information that we're calling up, ID, quantity, length, area, surface area, and net volume. That's our first quantity draw on the model. We're going to the next one here. This is then our all elements volumes. So this schedule is all about only the volumes of these elements. Let's look at the criteria. Again, this is calling for slabs in this case, just by illustration. The ID, the name. Here we are calling up the building material, composite, and profile that element is made of. So therefore, it will report different skins of that wall component that's made up of composite, and it's a component schedule. The quantities, projected component area, the component volume, the density, mass, and just for why not the embodied carbon, embodied energy that is coming from those building materials. Okay. And as you'll see then here, it is reporting on the different components. So it will be the brick itself in the composite, the sand in the plaster, the gravel and the soil and your concrete within the composites that may be used. Okay. And just to unfold the schedule panel, if I unmerge these elements, you'll see that Archicad then unpacks every single element within this slab group and what they are made of. And because they are similar, like this group here is similar, if I merge them, Archicad will group them and it will give you the collective quantities and the collective net floor area and the volume collectively for those material types and components. The next schedule that we've got set up is then the all surfaces schedule. And you'll obviously the type is the column, the ID and the name, and then the exposed area and the surface, the name of that surface. So this is a steel column and it's painted with light gray. That is then the surface area of that column. So this refers to the column itself, and then this is the column segments that I mentioned before, reported separately, and we can go on with all the other elements. Same information coming through from the model directly. Yeah. We'll go into the properties just now. This is a schedule that I call a working schedule. And this shows you everything about these elements. And this is, again, the element schedule. It's an intermediary schedule because this is where you can either do the classification straight from the schedule, or you can do the classifications from the model view or the plan view. And we'll go into that next. So once it's calculated, you can enter the unit cost in the schedule or on the model element. So that's why I have this particular schedule. It's easy to see your information, pick up errors, change things. You can change the unit assignment. You can change the classification into these values as you need. And at the end of the day, this is the elements that has been costed already. And if I enter 200 here, as we go along this process, these elements will start building up their cost. And this is then your cost report that you can put out. You can also make available this full data report if it needs to be interrogated, but in general, this is your end game. And the more we classify these elements, you'll see this populate. So I came here on purpose so that we can see nothing is in there now, and we'll see it populate as we go along. So going back to the model, we've seen those schedules, and now we're just going to quickly have a look at the properties themselves. The unit is set up as an option set so that you can use the drop down and designate the unit for the calculation. Okay, so that's meters, square meters, cubic meters, each for any instance of quantity. You don't want to allow multiple choices. There's only one unit per item. And we use this set unit for measurement as the default so that you need to complete that when you see this. It's not done. You need to make the assignment. You're in control. The unit cost is obviously a numbered value, just the value that you type in. You don't type it in here on the property itself. Otherwise, this will be a default value to all the elements, and you might miss replacing the zeros with the actual value that's needed for that rate on that calculation. It's going to collapse these. Get closer. You can focus. Then your calculated cost. Here we are starting with an expression, and it's a number expression, so the result it will report back is a number, and the expression is made up of auto text, very much like auto text. You can bring in parameters of any kind from these elements. Obviously, it needs to be number parameters so that the calculation will work. And you can then also bring in to the formula. You're building a formula to bring in what this calculation, what that number value that's brought in, what the unit is. Okay. So in this case, we're bringing in unit cost and multiplied by takeoff value. In the background, you can see it will take the unit cost, one just above, and then go to the bottom and say takeoff value. So let's look at these two properties themselves to see what's behind this formula. I'm just going past these others. Here's a series of expressions that's driving the surface areas, the gross net surface area for the area calculations on that surface schedule. Length is just a normal length that's being called up. So we'll go into our parameters and just go in the search there. Length. If you spell it right, it will work. So you use a general parameter and just double click to add that parameter to the expression for the calculation. Okay. And the same with these math and logical functions. You just pick one, double click on it, and it inserts into the formula of the expression. Okay. So the volume is the same thing. It was just picked from that list. And here is the big one. So we just saw that this was calling for the unit cost, and that's just a number value. The takeoff value is quite an extensive expression. So it's making a statement and saying, if the unit is each, the resulting figure is 1. The default value is 1. It goes further and say, if the unit is meter, it is then a length of 1, and the unit is meter. Again, the same question, if the unit is square meter, then we want to deal with the surface area. It needs to be 1 as default unit, and that is your unit that you work with, and the same then for your volume. So this formula will effectively check, is this a volumetric element that is called up into the schedule. If it's yes for that item, then it will report the volume in cubic meters. If it's a beam, it's a linear item, it will report the meters from the same formula. So this formula is quite clever in that regard. Okay. We'll go into the detail about that in the questions and answers as far as we can, but I think we need to move on. So what we want to do is just bring up our walls, and I've grouped the exterior walls. Let's just take these exterior walls, as you can see there. And the first thing you want to do is assign the ASAQS classification for it. My info panel is just vertical here instead of horizontal as the default. And this is primary elements. It's on the ground floor. And we want to find the walls. It's a structural frame. So you go through these classifications to find the correct classification that describes its function. Or you can simply just search for, and you start to get to know these numberings so that you understand where it's from in that structure. So this is the primary one being 1.1, and you just double click and the assignment is done for that selection. So this roof, I've also included in the template a graphic override to indicate which, as you work, which classifications elements have been classified for this ASAQS. Okay, so you'll see as we change them, go to the classification and then just go roof. Again, I want this roof to be in the 1.1. Just a general roof. And the roof changed its color from orange to its original color because it has assignment. So as you can clearly see just here, what elements still you need to assign the classification for. And you can carry along. And we go paving. Paving. There's your paving. Yep, that's good enough. Okay, and the color is gone. You carry on with this process until everything that needs to be classified is no longer orange in this graphic override. And let's just quickly have a look at what happened in our schedules. So we've worked with walls and we've worked with the roof. So we just go down to the walls and the roof. And there you can see the unclassified has changed. Some of these walls, we only worked with the exterior walls. You can see they have been assigned and they are starting also to report additional information. Okay. So that's our surfaces. Okay. And here we can start seeing in our main schedule, go back down to the walls. And you see here that the unit is not allocated or selected. And obviously the value needs to be entered. So the best practice is to complete the process. So we're going to go back to these walls and focus on these walls for the exercise. Now we need to go into our properties. We've assigned the classification. Now we need to go into the properties, and here is our quantity and costing. We need to assign a unit. So this will be square meter for the wall. And while we're here, we can assign a cost. Just arbitrary for now, 250 per square meter is the cost. We're working in rands. Okay. And we go to the schedule here. You see there's the assignment of the unit cost, and our costing is starting to build up as we do these things. Main thing, assign the classification, select the unit, and enter the unit cost. The calculation will be done, as you see. Okay. I'm going to switch to the completed project on account of our time running out. And we're going to just go to this model here. And if we just designate our classification check, and you'll see that the interior furniture is orange and the site mesh is orange, and all the rest looks fine, all classified. And you'll be able to download the sample model with a completed set, all three models files that I've showed. Okay. And we're just going to go to the important schedule here. And there you can see the doors have been classified, the unit been set, and all you need to do is then start entering your unit cost. And I left some of them off by purpose. We've got some slabs to sort out, and let's go, I don't know, 750 per square meter on paving. Okay. Now let's go to our slabs. You can select an item in the schedule, as you may know, and just go to the 3D window by means of that selection. If I press F5, Archicad will isolate these slabs for me. And I know that these pavings are done. These are then the slabs. And there's the roof slab there. I want to unselect that so I only work with my surface beds. And go and check there's the solid floors, that classification is correct. And I want to assign a unit. So let's go, I think it's cubic meters for this one. While I'm on the screen, these little tables looks like Excel spreadsheet icons. If you click this, it will populate the calculated value for that selected items in the preview of the properties on the element settings itself. And we go back to that schedule, go back to those slabs, you'll see that those are then designated. And here's one that's missing. That was the roof slab that was assigned, and it's also a concrete volume type element that we'll calculate at. Doesn't matter what we put in here now. Okay. And as you go along with that process and everything is being populated and sorted out, here you'll see the whole build up, starting to build up your costing for all the elements that has been sorted and set up to be complete. And that, in a nutshell, is how we get to this process. You can still enter the values, and you can see those calculations happening. I'm going to go to the slabs. Let's see if this actually wants a square meter instead. That's obviously not right. Okay. So as you can see, let's go to the walls. I'm just going to do a bulk assignment. Select the wall in the schedule, go to all walls, make sure it's visible. Let's just do all the walls together and put in the rate. And there is your rand values for the walls coming through, and that is up to your total. And that is it. Now I think we need to jump to questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
Hi, Fransha. Thanks. That was awesome. I'm sure everybody learned a lot, and I know expressions are considered an advanced topic, but there's quite a lot of material online to learn to make it look a lot less intimidating.
Yeah.
Anybody have some questions?
While we're waiting for people to take the first question, I think we should just make clear about the end, so that people can, while we're taking the questions, take down the QR code, take down the link, so that you can access the download files for this either now or just after the session. So everything that I showed you is not my own genius. I learned from the master, John Helgarth in the US, and through his community website to access the full template that does all the costing from concept to bidding, tendering, and the training materials that goes along with these templates. So those are fully cohesive templates, and not the small compact like this demo one. And for you to access that, you can just take down this link, this bit.ly link, or scan the QR code as we are taking questions.
I've also just pasted the info in the chat if you wanted to take the link from there.
All right, thanks.
All right, Gert, I see you have your hand up. You can unmute your mic and ask away.
Right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, I spent a couple of years ago, I spent quite a lot of time. I had nothing to do in a December, and I spent a lot of time on John Holgarth's templates for this topic. And I must say that I learned certainly a heck of a lot by, of the technical side of putting these schedules together and how information gets to where you want it. There's just one question that remains, and that is that everybody has their own sort of workflows and things, and my experience working with quantities is that you can never get it right as an architect because your brain works in another way. Yeah. So it is very handy to get the sort of general gist of how to get basic information out of an Archicad model. Which, as we all know, it all depends on how you put that model together. That's where it starts. If you model correctly, then you have a very usable data set. If you don't, then you can't really use the information for anything beyond more or less plus minus information. So I was wondering if there's anybody using Archicad at this stage who's really involved with putting together bills of quantities directly from models, working with QSs, and what that interaction is. Is there anything going on that we need to know of in terms of feedback from people like that use this in a on a serious scale as to tweaking our modeling? That was basically my question.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's an excellent question, Gert, and thank you. I have done some exercises like that with quantity surveyors in 2014 and 15. And the takeaway that I got from that process is QSs need not be scared that we are going to take away work from them. You need to, if you are doing this at full scale, like John's system allows you to, you need to be working in close collaboration with your quantity surveyor. In general, you can utilize these workflows and even more extensive expressions and formulas and schedules to extract all sorts of information from your model for specific use cases. For example, I did a project where we just quantified visually and by schedule the different scopes, the joinery, the sanitary ware, and so on. And by doing that, we could easily get early costing from suppliers or contractors and specialist contractors. And it all depends on how you need to procure the project. And you need to be aware of that and do what is needed for what you need to do. Don't go all out if you don't need to, or if it's not within your scope, or if it's very particularly not in your realm of responsibility on a project. So just be careful of that. But I've at least done a few. I don't know if there's anyone else.
Thanks, Francois. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for attending this evening, and thanks to Francois for making the time to deliver the presentation. I'm sure many of our attendees gained a lot of insight from the session. Thank you. We'll catch everyone next month.